In a situation where someone violates a guideline or attempts to violate a second time after it's been explained, that individual should be asked to leave the trip or outing, and the incident reported to your scout executive. Now, let's rejoin our conversation and hear about guidelines related to peer sexual abuse or bullying.
All set?
You bet.
This is the fun part, right?
I know. But look, we'd all like to be able to think that we can protect our kids all the time and everywhere. But occasionally abuse happens. And let me just say that each of you should feel a responsibility to enforce the guidelines, correct and document rule violations, plus report the violations to the person in charge as well as the scout executive.
If I found out one of my scouts had been abused, I would be so furious.
Yeah, my first inclination would be to go after the guy, big time.
That's perfectly understandable. But obviously that's not an option. You know, the first thing is to take steps to protect the child from any abuse, even if it happened outside of scouting.
Okay, but how can we even tell that they're being abused? I mean, other than them just telling us.
That's the hard part. You know, the best indicator is a child telling you someone hurt him or scared him or made him feel uncomfortable. And a lot of times kids don't tell anyone about it, but there might be physical signs or they start acting differently.
So what are some of the signs?
Physically, we're talking burns, bites, broken bones or black eyes where the story just doesn't add up or the boy tells it a little differently each time. You know, another sign is bruises in various stages of healing. Well, that might come from being beat up multiple times.
It's just a creepy conversation.
Yeah, it's tough stuff. But would you rather be informed and know what to do or have it continue? Look, a couple of other signs would be refusing to go to a friend or relative's house for no apparent reason, saying stuff like, I just don't like him anymore, or maybe acting out adult sexual behavior or using explicit language that a kid that age probably shouldn't know.
That's all good to know, but what about the kid that doesn't have any visible signs of abuse? You said a minute ago they might start acting differently, not wanting to go to someone's house. What are some other signs?
All abused kids are experiencing stress, and that can show in a lot of different ways. So you might see unhappiness, bedwetting, clinging or aggressive behavior, crying for no reason, the kid can't concentrate, changes in school performance, self-inflicted injuries, suddenly acting withdrawn, things like that.
Yeah, but I know of kids who are bedwetters, and I know for a fact they're not abused.
Well, that brings up a good point. You know, there are a lot of things in a kid's life that can cause stress. Divorce, death, moving, school. You know, all those things can have the same effect, so you have to be sensitive to that.
So, okay, the best indicator is a boy coming forward and telling you what's going on. What if he's lying?
That doesn't happen very often, and in any case, it's something trained investigators deal with.
But it would be horrible to turn someone in and then find out they were innocent.
Yeah, that's true. Look, it's very difficult to report someone as a possible child molester, especially if you know them well, or think you do. Look, it comes down to what you see and what you hear. If someone violates the guidelines, or a boy comes forward or shows some of these indicators we've talked about, you should report it.
How?
If it's in the scouting program, you need to call the scout executive immediately, and he or she will alert the authorities. And there may be times when you can't reach the scout executive and you have to call yourself. If you're aware of something outside of scouting, you should still call Child Protective Services or the police.
So what happens to the person you've turned in?
The guidelines say alleged abusers are out of the program, at least until the allegations are resolved.
But who's going to handle that? I mean, who's going to get them removed from the program?
The scout executive will take care of it. That's why you have to report all abuse accusations within the scouting program to the scout executive, so the problem can be addressed immediately.
Let's take a break here for another discussion regarding a possible youth protection situation. Watch the upcoming stage scenario. Then stop the program and take a few minutes to discuss what action you would take if you witnessed the situation. Remember the guidelines about privacy and consider how easy it is to put pictures on the internet. What would you do in this situation? Stop the video and take just a few minutes to discuss what action to take. Then restart the program when you're finished. Taking pictures of people in bathrooms or showering is clearly a violation of the privacy guideline. In this case, the recommended action would be to immediately confiscate the cell phone, delete any inappropriate photos, and discipline the scout. Swift action is necessary because of the ability to post digital images on the internet instantaneously. In addition, the action should be reported to the boy's parents and their help solicited in preventing future such behavior. Okay, Let's return now to our discussion and pick back up with what to do about accusations.
Well, what are we supposed to do if a boy comes to us with an accusation? I mean, how are we supposed to handle that?
The most important thing is to listen without questioning him. I mean, he's only going to tell you as much as he wants, so you have to be kind of neutrally supportive.
What in the world does that mean? Stare at him blankly?
No. You could say things like, that should never happen to anyone, or I wouldn't want that to happen to me, but you don't want to make any excuses for the abuser, like, I'm sure he didn't mean to. Look, secrecy is a big weapon for the abuser, and they tell their victims that they won't be believed if they tell someone what happened to them. So if you act like you don't believe the kid, you're only helping the abuser's case.
You say don't question the child. Okay, I get that, but are there other things that we should know about how to handle this?
You cannot promise to keep the information secret. You have to report any allegations of sexual abuse to the authorities immediately. Now, that's according to many state laws and BSA policy. If it's in the scouting program, you should report it to the scout executive immediately. Again, if he or she's not available, report it yourself to the proper authorities.
I'm telling you, I would have a hard time not going right after the guy.
I think we all feel that way. But it's important you don't get angry in front of the boy because he might interpret that as you being mad at him. It's already taking a lot of courage and trust for him to come forward.
Okay, so if we see signs of abuse and we witness it firsthand, or of course if the boy tells us about it, we report it to the scout executive immediately.
If it happens within the scouting program, yes. Or report it yourself to the authorities if the scout executive isn't around.
Right. And if it happens outside the program, we need to tell Child Protective Services or the police.
Right.
I'm confused on one point.
What's that?
Earlier we talked about physical abuse like bruising or broken bones. Are those really signs of sexual abuse?
They could be, but typically those are more about physical abuse. In fact, you're making a good point. We've mostly been talking about sexual abuse, but there's also physical and emotional abuse or neglect. You know, often kids suffer from more than one kind of abuse.
What about those? Are they part of these youth protection guidelines?
Absolutely. Physical abuse and neglect are things you should report to the scout executives or police. You know, neglect is a little tricky, though. If it's obvious the kid is skinnier than a coat hanger and not properly dressed for the season and eats everything in sight when he's around you and tells you he never gets fed at home, well, you might want to take that up with the scout executive and see what can be done. But look, the effects of poverty and neglect can be similar. Bottom line, if you see the basic needs like food, clothing, shelter not being met, you should report it.
What about emotional abuse?
In those cases, it's up to us to continue to make scouting a positive experience for the boys. You know, things like no bullying or mean nicknames, treat each other with respect, follow the scout oath and the scout law. All those things will help any boys dealing with emotional abuse.
But it's not reportable.
Well, actually, it is. If a boy comes to you and makes suicidal or self-demeaning remarks, then that's a clear sign he needs help and it should be reported. You know, reporting isn't negative. It's just trying to facilitate help for the kid.
What do we do if we want some more information about all this?
Well, all BSA youth protection resources are listed in the youth protection section of www.scouting.org. And the BSA has some great video-based awareness training materials for youth members, too. For Cub Scouts, there's It Happened to Me, which covers the 4 basic rules for personal safety. For Boy Scouts, there's A Time to Tell, which is built around the 3 R's of youth protection: recognize, resist, and report. And for older scouts and venturers, there's Personal Safety Awareness, which has material more appropriate for teenagers. We think it's a good idea for every unit to watch these programs once a year with their parents present so they can discuss the subject with their boys.
You know, that is such a good idea. We really need to do that.
Yeah, and while the whole subject makes my skin crawl, I feel better knowing what to do and what to look for if I see or hear it.
Well, good. I mean, that's pretty much it as far as guidelines and reporting. You guys have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Me too.
All right, so now back to the real stuff. Where are you guys going next weekend?
Okay, wait, where are you going?
Take a look.